Chapel vs. T'Pring. Ethan Peck breaks down Spock's two Star Trek Strange New Worlds romances. Ethan Peck breaks down how Lieutenant Spock feels about both of his love interests, T'Pring, Gia Sandhu, and Nurse Christine Chapel, Jess Bush, in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Peck has played Spock since Star Trek Discovery Season 2, and Star Trek Strange New Worlds has truly allowed Ethan to explore Spock's humanity as the Vulcan science officer gradually evolves into the version of Spock played by Leonard Nimoy in Star Trek, the original series. Between Chapel and T'Pring, Spock has one of the most complicated love lives in Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Screen Rant exclusively interviewed Ethan Peck at his TLV Trek to Vegas about his experience playing Spock, and the clip of Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3 released at San Diego Comic-Con where the USS Enterprise's crew is turned into Vulcans. Regarding Spock's two love interests in Strange New Worlds, Ethan Peck explained how differently his Vulcan alter ego feels about T'Pring compared to Nurse Chapel. Read Peck's quote below. Because Nurse Chapel is fully human and T'Pring is fully Vulcan, they really, I think, reflect totally different and opposite sides of Spock. They almost externally represent the conflict in himself. I'm not sure, but I guess those characters have gotten along well in some episodes. But in my experience of playing Spock, there is, I want to say, like, a shame or resentment that I think comes up when he's with T'Pring, because I don't think he feels he's ever really belonged on Vulcan, and doesn't really feel Vulcan, because he was so rejected as a child by his peers at school and by other members of his community. And so I think shame and resentment really come up for him with T'Pring. And with Nurse Chapel, it's all about learning. It's about learning to be more human. It's about learning about humans. And Nurse Chapel is such a free-spirited and chaotic character, and I think that really informs and is sort of helping guide Spock to where he ends up in the original series. So they're very important relationships to him, of course. Really important learning spaces for him. Spock's love life was thrown into complete turmoil in Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 2. In Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 5, Charades, T'Pring realized Spock has feelings for Nurse Chapel, and she put a stop to their engagement. This gave Spock a green light to pursue a romance with Christine, but by the end of Strange New Worlds Season 2, Chapel had also broken it off from Spock to pursue her career aspirations away from the Starship Enterprise. Further complications to Spock and Nurse Chapel's relationship arrive in Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3 in the form of Dear Roger Corby, Cillian O'Sullivan. Corby becomes Chapel's fiancé in Star Trek, the original series canon, and it remains to be seen how Spock handles this new contender to Chapel's affections. It's also not clear if T'Pring returns in Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3, and what the status of her engagement to Spock is, since there are still years to go before it's formally dissolved in Star Trek, the original series' Amok Time. In Star Trek Strange New Worlds, one of the most intriguing storylines revolves around the love triangle involving Spock, Nurse Christine Chapel, and his betrothed, T'Pring. This dynamic has fascinated fans for its emotional complexity, cultural significance, and the ways it challenges the often stoic and logical nature of the half-human, half-Vulcan character. Ethan Peck, who portrays Spock in the series, has offered insight into the stark differences between these two relationships and how they reflect the two sides of Spock's identity. Spock's struggle between logic and emotion. Spock has always been a character torn between two worlds: his Vulcan heritage, which demands logic and emotional control, and his human side, which craves connection and the freedom to feel. This internal struggle is perfectly embodied by the two women in his life, T'Pring and Christine Chapel. T'Pring, a pure Vulcan, represents tradition and the life Spock is expected to lead. From the moment of their betrothal, their relationship is steeped in duty and formality. The two are bound by Vulcan culture and their familial obligations, setting the framework for a union that prioritizes logic, structure, and societal expectations. In contrast, Chapel is all about spontaneity and emotion. As a human, she embraces passion and curiosity, standing in stark opposition to the rigid Vulcan norms that dominate Spock's life. Chapel's feelings for Spock have been bubbling beneath the surface for a while, evolving from admiration into a deep affection that stands in contrast to his relationship with T'Pring. Her connection with Spock allows him to explore the more emotional, human aspects of his personality, something he often suppresses. Ethan Peck has emphasized that this emotional dichotomy is essential to Spock's development in Strange New Worlds. The relationship with T'Pring offers Spock stability, yet it also confines him to the Vulcan standards he often questions. With Chapel, on the other hand, Spock is free to experience emotions without the constant pressure of his Vulcan upbringing. These two relationships, therefore, represent the two halves of Spock's soul, the logical Vulcan and the passionate human, and navigating between them is a key part of his journey in the series. The tension between T'Pring and Chapel. What makes the Chapel-T'Pring-Spock love triangle particularly compelling is that both women bring something vital to Spock's life, yet neither can fully integrate into both sides of his world. T'Pring, in her dedication to Vulcan customs, provides Spock with a sense of belonging within his Vulcan heritage. However, her unwavering commitment to logic often leaves little room for the emotional complexities that Spock, as half-human, feels but struggles to express. In Strange New Worlds, T'Pring is depicted as more than just a one-dimensional Vulcan partner. She has her own desires and struggles, trying to balance her love for Spock with her expectations and ambitions within Vulcan society. But her relationship with Spock is transactional, in many ways rooted more in duty than passion, which creates a gulf between them. T'Pring loves Spock, but on her terms, always keeping a certain emotional distance, as is expected within Vulcan relationships. On the other hand, Chapel is deeply emotional and intuitive, willing to challenge Spock to embrace his human side. Her feelings for Spock are more intense, driven by admiration and a deep emotional bond that she hesitates to fully acknowledge due to the complications it might create. Peck has noted that Chapel allows Spock to take a breath and embrace his humanity, providing him with a respite from the constant struggle to conform to Vulcan ideals. Their connection is more organic, growing from their shared experiences and mutual admiration. This contrast between T'Pring and Chapel also speaks to a larger theme within Strange New Worlds, the tension between duty and desire. Spock, as a Starfleet officer, a Vulcan, and a human, is constantly torn between what is expected of him and what he truly wants. T'Pring represents his sense of duty, while Chapel embodies the desires he rarely allows himself to acknowledge. Spock's evolution through his relationships. Peck has spoken about how these two relationships push Spock to grow in different ways. With T'Pring, Spock is learning how to navigate Vulcan expectations, and this forces him to grapple with his own identity as someone who straddles two cultures. T'Pring challenges him to be the Vulcan he was raised to be, but her expectations also highlight how uncomfortable he feels in that role. With Chapel, the dynamic is more personal. Chapel pushes Spock to be vulnerable, to express emotions that he often suppresses. This relationship shows Spock's humanity and the emotional intelligence he rarely gets to showcase. While T'Pring encourages restraint, Chapel fosters openness. Their budding romance is therefore not only about attraction, but also about Spock finding a way to reconcile his human and Vulcan sides. Ultimately, Peck's portrayal of Spock's relationships in Strange New Worlds illuminates the deep internal conflict that defines the character. T'Pring and Chapel represent the duality within Spock, the pull between logic and emotion, duty and freedom. Neither woman is inherently better for Spock. Instead, both relationships reflect the ongoing battle for balance in his life.